Welcome to the Tailwind Marketing Podcast, where we talk to other B2B marketing leaders and agency executives about how to grow our businesses profitably. Hosted by Carlos Corredor and Antonio Santana, the co-founders of Condor Marketing and Staffing, an Inc. 5000 company and one of the fastest growing B2B agencies in the U.S.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Tailwind Marketing. And today's episode is brought to you by Condor Marketing and Staffing Agency. Are you generating pipeline like it's 2024? Most marketing teams of IT companies struggle to drive sales. We help them leverage data and technology to make the most with their budget and get credit and respect from the rest of the organization. And you can learn more at condoragency.com. I have Chad here from Rise25. Chad has done thousands of interviews in other business and marketing podcasts as well. And today we will be discussing our story with analytics and our approach to numbers in general. So welcome, Chad.
Hey, thanks so much, Carlos. Great to be here. Hey, I've talked to you before and you told me kind of you have a specific expertise in analytics. Can you just kind of refresh my memory and maybe elaborate on how that came about?
Yeah, so even before the agency, and we started Condor 5 years ago, but as a kid, I used to love baseball, right? So that's how I really got into numbers. Reading statistics, playing fantasy baseball, doing my own projections for players, understanding statistical models, not only for baseball, but for sports in general. So, I've always had a passion for sports, and I think in consequence for numbers, to be honest. And then really the first project where Antonio is the founder of Condor, but before Condor, we developed a statistical services company for sports newspapers in Venezuela and in the Dominican Republic. That's how we got started, and we didn't know anything about websites or digital marketing for that matter. So that's how we learned how to build it, right? And I realized that I used to be a baseball journalist actually, but I realized that that's what I wanted to do is more on the digital side of it and not on the journalist side of it, right? So I did a master's in digital marketing, and to gain more experience in the field, I started working at an agency in Chicago and my role was being the manager of the analytics team, right? So it was not a coincidence, kind of like one thing led to another. So I led a team of marketers, data scientists. We use predictive analytics, but with marketing data, right? I was there 4 years. And obviously I learned a lot of how those two worlds, met and what you needed to get the best insights possible from that. And then, when we started Condor, obviously, we had already that background. So the first type of profiles that we hired, they were data scientists and engineers, right? So we have those type of people doing paid campaigns, analyzing the marketing data. And then because of the networking that I had while I was working, it was called Rise Interactive, or it is called Rise Interactive, that agency, and our beginnings. And, that also led us to do work for other marketing agencies, white labeling our analytics services, right? So we got exposure to enterprise level clients to startups and everything in between. And that's really, how we started and what got us to build that kind of DNA in analytics DNA in our agency.
So when you say you use predictive analytics using marketing data, can you give me more like a specific example of some group of numbers you might use, and you plug that into your formula, and then out comes something that Condor Agency would do?
Yeah, I'll tell you a cool project. That can where the two worlds can meet, right? So, for example, Google Ads. That's even though it's a campaign, it's an advertising campaign. is much more numbers driven than, let's say, a Super Bowl commercial, right? A video for a Super Bowl ad, right? Heavily data driven, because it's all, there's not even an image until you get to the landing page. But in the Google platform, you only see a link, and it's what words you put there and how people engage with those words. That's clicking, reading, and obviously then in the landing page, it's more important, the creative portion. But there's a lot of numbers in Google Ads campaign. So, you know, when a client spends millions of dollars in a group of 20, 30, 40 keywords and small variations of that keyword, broad match, exact match, etc., you suddenly start to get a lot of data that, interpreted in the right way, you know, can mean, you know, yeah, the millions of dollars in positive ROI for the client, right? So how does seasonality play a factor? How do you know, should you put the next $100,000 into this keyword versus the other one, right? Understanding seasonality, understanding when you get to a certain threshold of impression shares, how your revenue starts to go down, combining those two things with the budget, with your business goals, because maybe you need to promote one service, you know, heavier than another one, right? So if you combine all of those elements, then, you know, that's when magic starts to happen.
So
that's
sure
just like
there
one
are,
example where you can, a very obvious example in the digital marketing world where you need to make data-driven decisions.
So I'm sure there are some, you know, problems with relying on data. I know probably there's technical elements, there's human elements. Take me through some of the technical issues that might involve technical problems associated with using data.
Yep. So it's interesting because I will get to the human part, but yeah, the technical elements is first of all, having the data that you need, right? When you ask a question, right, what was our ROI on this campaign? If you ask a question to your marketing agency, to your marketer, it's very often they don't have to, oh, I have to put that report together. And then, you know, okay, are they going to talk about conversions, which are provided out of the box by Google Ads? Or are they talking about how many clients you close, right? Because if you're going to talk about that, or at least the pipeline that you generated, and out of, you know, what came from referrals, what came from email marketing, what came from Google Ads, if it's from Google Ads or LinkedIn Ads, in what campaign, what keyword, right? You need to integrate those platforms, in particular your CRM, with the paid platforms and web analytics, right? So you can start talking and measuring in terms of pipeline, in terms of clients closed, and not in terms of impressions and clicks. That's, for example, you know, for one of our clients, that's a problem that they have. As they say, you know, garbage in, garbage out, and you know, that's for our client. But I can explain you for ourselves. We are a marketing agency, and we help other marketing agencies with staffing, with analytic services, and a lot of times it's for their own data and their own business. For example, for our business, we have to integrate project management data, right, to understand our gross margins by, let's say, service, by client. We need to integrate the project management platform like a ClickUp or Asana, whatever it is, to our time tracking software. In our case, you know, we've used Harvest, Clockify, or even the project management itself sometimes has that. With your revenue data that might be coming from your financial platform like your QuickBooks, with your own spreadsheets where you have salary information and some other data that you need to understand, okay, how much is it costing me to deliver this service, or by deliverable, what's profitable, where do I have to improve my margins, what do I need to do more, and I need to go out and sell, and what type of projects I need to, you know, to forget about, or at least to improve the quality so I can sell them at a higher price, you know. So if you don't have the right data in place, those are the technical integrations, you know, that agencies and B2B companies often face.
And you have that, you're able to help people with that, the correct data then.
Right, exactly, because again, from a technical standpoint, you need the technical skills, right? And you need people to understand not only Python, they need to understand Python and Google Ads, or they need to understand QuickBooks API and Google Analytics downloads and how to automate all of those things together.
And then once you have that data, I mean, you mentioned garbage in, garbage out. How do you keep it from being garbage out?
Well, I say a lot of times people, they get a report and they don't have good insights. And that's because, again, they used the wrong input, right? They were only looking at their web analytics, for example, right? And just to give an easy example, right? If you're only looking at the conversions, but you're not understanding how many of those turn into clients, for example, that's what I call garbage in. Or if you don't have the automations in place to clean the data before you transform it and put it in the report, then you're gonna have nonsense numbers to show to your boss, to your client, etc. So that's what we usually mean with garbage in, garbage out. And yeah, how to prevent it, I think you need to have screwed up a few times to understand, how not to do it again. But it's a combination. It's a combination of technical skills, of a good QC checklist on your end, of conversations that are structured with your client that are based on goals, so you know how to report on business goals and not on marketing metrics. I'd say it involves all of that.
And then I know there's kind of just a human element that can cause problems with data. Tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, and I think that's actually the most challenging. A lot of times you think it's challenge. Well, it's always a challenge because from a technical standpoint, not anyone can do it. And even after you solve the integration, there are those couple of things that I mentioned. But it's been more challenging for me personally, and for us as an agency, and for our clients, usually, to build that mindset in the team that, as you mentioned, the human element, right? Where you need to have a person that it's a numbers person, that it's a business-minded person more than just numbers, right? That's a challenge, because ultimately, when you have the right data, it's really the interpretation of that data. The data can be accurate, but a lot of times you'll see tables with 10 dimensions, 10 metrics, different time periods, and it's understanding, as one of my favorite books is called, separating the signal from the noise, right? Very few people have the ability to do that. I always tell the team, when they just throw out a number, is okay, so what? What are you trying to say with that number? That's having a person that can tell a story focusing on the right insights. That's the most challenging part. I'll give you an example. We also worked, we launched a nonprofit during COVID to leverage data in Latin America in particular, to understand what areas and cities needed to be more strict or less strict with measurements, because they were not using data. They were just panicking out of what the media said. And there's a lot of people in charge. And in this case, we're talking about newspapers, for example, or media outlets, but the same thing can be said about marketing, that have a really high responsibility, and really they're not up to the challenge or what that or what that responsibility and the impact that it has, right? For example, I remember, during that time, first year of COVID, you would read a headline in newspaper that says, we've reached 100,000 deaths this month, right? Mm-hmm. And if a person reads that, what is the so what of that, right? I mean, if you read that, what is your reaction?
Well, this is terrible.
Right. I need to lock myself inside my house because, wow, 100,000, people died. It's right there. I read it there in the newspaper of your city or a national newspaper, right? But in reality, if you interpret the data, you say, okay, it's been the 6th month with a downward trend in deaths. And beyond that, you know, 2 months ago, the vaccine is available, and the people that have gotten COVID and have had the vaccine, you know, it has a death rate of less than 0.5%, right? And actually, the message is, don't worry, if you're in the city and the vaccine is available, or if you already have the vaccine, it's not a concern anymore. So see how different it is, how you interpret, you know, the two interpretations from the same data set that you get, right? So a lot of times that happens in marketing. In the case, for example, of a marketing or a status meeting, which is a very common example between an agency and the client, right? The agency comes in and they say, you know what, we've had this quarter, we improved our cost per click by 15%. You know, so what? You know, is that good? Is that bad? You know, whereas if you have a person representing your agency that comes in and says, okay, doesn't even mention cost per clicks, but they come in and they say, you know what, our pipeline went down this month because we push, even though the conversions went up, those people they were not ready to buy, they were not qualified by the sales team, and that's because we push too much educational content. So we need to develop more content or videos that are more towards decision makers that are ready to buy, right? That's an interpretation that will have an impact on the business, right? And there are very few marketing analysts, agencies, or departments that combine the two things, the technical capabilities with the interpretation capabilities, let's say.
Is there a commonly misinterpreted piece of data that you found that a lot of your clients like were depending heavily on before they met you, and you were like, okay, maybe you need to look at it differently? Or can it vary from, you know, case to case?
Yeah, I mean, I think more than the piece of data, I think it's the person in charge. I'd rather a person come to me and say, hey, you know what, I don't understand numbers, you know, I don't want to do this. The most dangerous ones are the people that say that they're great with numbers, and they come out and they spit numbers left and right, and we increased 16.5% and 3 more and 3 year over year. And you're like, if you don't know how to explain what that means, having that critical thinking that could be a report, it could be a person, it could be an agency, it could be a study. You know, the most dangerous ones are a research study shows that doing X and Y will increase or decrease X metric by X%. It's like, who did that study? What type of companies? In what context? In what year? Who responded that? You know, I'm not saying the study is wrong, but you need to understand that context, right? A lot of times you don't even need data to make a decision, right? And that's something that you also need to understand. If you know that your current page doesn't explain your business well, you don't need to do an A/B testing comparing it with a new page that you know that explains your business better, right? It's not a matter of data. It's like sometimes you need to know when your intuition is more important and when not. You know, when you shouldn't let yourself be convinced by, again, these dangerous folks, right? But I think it applies to every type of data set. In general, I would say the most common mistake is looking at a platform's data in a silo, right? Whether that's a paid platform, email marketing platform, if you're not tying it to the business, whether that's your CRM, your bank account, an Excel, you know, where you're doing the math, if that's the case. But that's the most common error, is just looking at a single number or a single platform or a single data set without more context.
Yeah, so it sounds like knowing the right questions or the right nuances that could be associated with some particular point is very important, and not everybody just automatically knows those things.
Yeah, exactly. And a lot of times one of my favorite movies is Moneyball. I read the book. I don't know if, are you familiar with that movie?
Oh, I've seen every time I come across that movie on TV, I just have to stop and watch the rest of it.
Right. Obviously it's from a true story from the Oakland Athletics, and that's like the Bible of the nerd baseball fans. Is the book that the movie was based on, and that book came 20 years or 10 to 20 years, I don't know exactly, but I read the book when it came out. Obviously I saw the movie, even though a lot of people, when they read a book, then they don't like the movie. I still love the movie. And it's kind of like that, right? There's a lot of misconceptions, right? Oh, my first batter needs to be a skinny guy, that runs fast, and then these guys are putting a chubby guy just because he takes a lot of walks. And the same thing applies to marketing. And if you can find that a way of analyzing both your own data and third-party data to make better decisions, you definitely have a competitive advantage in a marketing world that's more competitive by the day, by the minute, right? So, yeah.
What's your favorite scene from Moneyball?
Let me think.
I can tell you mine.
What's yours?
When Brad Pitt, Billy Bean, he goes into Art Howe's office and he's like, you need to play, and I can't remember the guy's name, the catcher, you need to play him at first base from now on. No, I'm playing Pena. Actually, we traded Pena. And then they're like, as far as Giambi, he's gone too. And then Art Howe flips out. And then of course they start winning.
Yeah.
But Art Howe got all the credit. Art Howe got all the credit for the Credit Fest that year, when really it was their approach using analytics, and Art Howe was just kind of like irrelevant. Yeah. And Art Howe ended up getting a job with the Mets, and he got fired like 2 years later.
Yeah, I remember one that I thought it was funny, and it's funny because it happens. That there's a prospect that has good skills or tools, or somewhat good, and the scout says, nah, let's not sign him. He has an ugly girlfriend. Shows lack of self-confidence, and like, I understand how that, when you have absolutely nothing else, that's a data. If that's the only data point you have, and you need to make a decision based on that, I get it. But like, if you have other type of data that it's a little more, trustworthy, but that's a great movie, amazing movie.
Okay. Well, hey, Carlos, it's been a fascinating conversation. Great to talk to you today. Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you, Chad. I'm sure we'll talk soon. And thanks everyone for listening in.
So long, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Tailwind Marketing Podcast. If you enjoyed it, remember to subscribe for future episodes. Until next time.